What is up, everyone? Brandon First, aka First Report, representing the First Off the Bench podcast network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are First. Welcome into another episode of the NFL Weekly. It is time to preview Week 8 here on the network. With me, as always, is my friend and co-host Raider Jim Martinez. You can find Mr. Martinez at Raider Jim 1090. How you doing tonight, sir?
Hey, I'm doing good. I guess I have to give in to the fact that pretty soon the shorts have to get put away. I have to wear more than just a t-shirt because I've been going out with my doggies in the morning and I've been cold.
Yeah, pull up, find the quote unquote, let's call them Southern California winter coats.
That's
I don't
right.
think they're the same winter coats that our friends back east have to wear, but yeah, even today, normally, show up to work, it's still dark out. By my first break, maybe a little overcast, but by lunch, take the sweatshirt off, regret that you wore pants. Not today. So yeah, that quote unquote fall weather I think is coming, and I do believe maybe this weekend is daylight saving. So that's when I think it's really going to hit when you get
Next
home and
weekend.
you go
Next weekend.
next
That first
weekend. Okay,
it's that first Saturday in November.
gotcha. Okay, so yeah, it's going to be a situation where it's 4:30, 5 o'clock, and you're going, well, where am I? Why it's pitch black out. So that fall time of year as we get ready to celebrate Halloween and dive into the bigger holidays. But before we do that, of course, we are going to look ahead to week 8. But even before that, we are going to take a moment to look back at week 7, and the craziness continues as the one-win teams. I think there were 3 or 4 one-win teams all go out, get huge upset wins. Saw a nice little funny little Facebook. Caleb Williams has 2 bad games. All of a sudden, all those teams with 1 loss, they start winning. It's kind of ironic. I don't think it's that cut and dry, but at the same time, definitely something to keep an eye on. But our thoughts on week 7, Raider Jim, what you got for us?
Well, my saving grace, my consolation was at the very last minute and doing some reevaluating. I sent a buddy a pick and I said, here's what you want to do. You want to take the Vikings +8 and you want to go over 38.5. So I will tell you, I felt real good at the end of that game. But that was about it. I mean, come on. I did not expect the Patriots to roll up 29 points on the Bills. And the Bills have really become this inconsistent, can't depend on them type of a team. At least for me, that's how I'm seeing them. I'm sure it's not as bad and as dire as that. Same would maybe go for Tampa Bay, who week in, week out, you don't know what you're going to get, but that is holding true for several of these teams. Baltimore Ravens, that's another story. They're really starting to come around and play consistent. What they did to the Lions, who I thought would come out and they would run up a lot of points, only 44 points, which isn't a bad total. But to think that after 44 points, the Detroit Lions only had 6, and those were all in the fourth quarter. So I don't know what was going on there. And of course, we've got my boys, the boys in silver and black, who didn't let me down. They went into the Windy City and just looked awful, downright terrible. Bears started a basically a D2 quarterback, but not only did he play well, I will tell you what you hear me say as a lot of us say, you win it in the trenches. And with the Chicago offensive line, the way they pushed around the Raiders defensive line, and they pretty much took Crosby out of the game even, because you would think with a first time starter back there, Crosby was going to have a field day. Nope, they couldn't do it. Still nothing coming from the edges for the Raiders. They're just a real train wreck every week, and it's not going to get any easier this week. But nice week all the way around. Kind of interesting, even if you didn't have the right picks. Look at Cleveland Browns pull out a 1-point victory over the Colts. I didn't see that coming, but I did have the Browns covering the spread on that one. And the New York Giants won a game. I mean, that kind of sums up the first 7 weeks of the season.
Yeah, I went 3-4, but I should have gone 4-3. I still cannot figure out how the Chargers and Kansas City did not go over 48.5. It's one of the bigger questions I'll have. I think I texted you about it. I mean, I think it was 24-17 at half, and I'm going, okay, we're gonna at least we got a
Something
green
good.
bean coming in. Not so much. So yeah, once again, the Chiefs. I think I just gotta. Seems like my two worst losses this year, or at least that I remember, was of course Mahomes sliding on the 1 yard line, and then the Chiefs not getting at least a field goal, or the Chargers for that matter. But yeah, it's been a very interesting run of things. But the one thing that jumps out to me is, as crazy as the NFL has been this season, so up and down. We're 7 weeks in, or most teams have played 6 or 7 games, and the two teams that I think we all expected to be at the top are at the top. It's the first time in a very long time we haven't seen a quote unquote Super Bowl hangover. I'm not writing I'm not writing the Chiefs or Eagles into that right now or anything like that,
Sure,
but
sure.
both of these teams are 6-1. Chiefs obviously riding a 6-game winning streak. Eagles looked very impressive last weekend. So it's kind of crazy. All this chaos is going around, yet you still kind of have the old reliable, or at least old reliable in the AFC doing their thing, and the Eagles on the NFC side. Another couple thoughts that I had is I brought it up a few weeks ago, and I just, this is a serious question, but I just wonder if it is time that we maybe reevaluate, or at least start asking some questions about Brock Purdy. Because at the end of the day, he made some mistakes. Sure, he made some throws that looked really good, but he made some really key turnovers in that game. I know it's a road game. It's a tough environment. This isn't the Mike Zimmer Minnesota Vikings that, might not score a ton of points, but they're going to be in your face. They're going to force turnovers. That's not what this Vikings team does. Brian Flores has done a fantastic job kind of changing things. Unfortunately, with Brian Flores' defenses, sometimes he's going to give up the big plays, because I think I saw 57% blitz rate, which is just, I think it was 20% more than the next closest team. So yeah, look, you're going to give up big plays. And I think one of the great things that Brian Flores is able to do is kind of recognize that, look, Brock Purdy probably isn't going to beat me on the deep ball. Let's get after him. Let's force him to kind of check it down, or find someone in the kind of intermediary routes. And unfortunately, that's where he kind of got beat up. That's where he threw his interceptions. So once again, I'm not even saying that I'm not this or that. I know the story of Brock Purdy is great, and I know all these things. It's a fantastic storyline, but we have to treat this quarterback the same as we treat Dak Prescott, the same as we treat Lamar Jackson,
That's
Kirk
right.
Cousins. If games start to fall because of his decisions, we can't go back to, oh, well, he was the last pick of the draft. Cut him some slack. All right. I just, it's getting to that point, and that's not coming from a spot of an Eagle fan wanting to throw shade at the Niners. I want the Niners to be at their top if we play them in the NFC Championship. Like I said last year, I'm not going to give that trophy back, but yeah, I felt like we didn't fully, earn that, if you will, in that game, because you're not playing with the quarterback. I understand that, but once again, I'm not giving anything back. So I am just kind of wondering if the Brock Purdy situation. Now, side note on that, Brock Purdy is in concussion protocol.
Yes.
Sam Darnold looks like he is going to get the start. Now, granted, we are recording on the 25th of October. That is a Wednesday. Still plenty of time for things to get figured out, but possible to see Sam Darnold play against Cincinnati this weekend, which we'll get to here in a bit. But one final little bonus topic I wanted to throw in as well. We are approaching the trade deadline, and the Philadelphia Eagles, of course, made a trade with the Tennessee Titans. The reason I do want to talk about this is because, the Tennessee Titans have essentially put up the for sale sign. Everybody in that building, including Derrick Henry, is available. Some other interesting names have been tossed around. The Giants have said no, they're not going to trade Saquon Barkley. For me, I'm just wondering why not? I mean, unless you're going to sign him. But I don't think Saquon Barkley's ready or, too excited to come back to that situation. Go out, get some draft picks. You'll probably get at least one, maybe 2 first-round picks, maybe a first and a second. And obviously Derrick Henry, and another one out there in the AFC West, Jerry Jeudy. wide receiver, as obviously I think the Broncos are ready to kind of get ready to sell off as well. And one final one that doesn't make a ton of sense to me, but as an Eagle fan would make me very happy, Chase Young. His name has been passed around as well. But Raider Jim, any thoughts on some of these trade talks? And I feel like over the last 5 years, the NFL trade deadline has actually become relevant, because normally it was, a seventh round conditional draft pick for a backup tight end. That might be the most exciting draft or trade thing you get. Last year, of course, we saw Christian McCaffrey and some other moves. But any thoughts on the impending trade deadline?
Yeah, primarily the AFC West. You mentioned Judy out there with the Broncos. He is a possible, but probably not. What I have heard or what I have read out of the Broncos is they are going to try to protect or not even consider the way they phrased it was basically, we'll talk about anybody. So if they get approached about anybody, that's great. But it's primarily on the defensive side where they said they will actively look at all offers that come in and consider anything that gets put on the table that is, relevant or real and not out of the realm of possibility. So you could see moves from the Broncos on the defensive side of the ball. On the Raiders side, it's that same thing. Now, I have referred to this in other podcasts we've done. I don't know if I've actually referred to this when we talk NFL, but papers like the National Enquirer, the New York Post, but primarily the Enquirer, were actually established back in the mid-1800s during the Civil War. They called them the Blood Papers, where Jim and Brandon are walking down the street and two guys are coming the other way, and we call each other names, and then we throw rocks at each other, and there's some guy standing by, and he prints a paper that talks about this bloodbath that happened. Well, Jim got hit in the head with a rock, and Brandon carried him off to the side and took him to the bar. That's what really happened, but they had to sell the papers, so they made it big. When it comes to the Raiders, if you look week in and week out, since the offseason, since the season began, everything else, Devontae Adams, they're going to get rid of Devontae Adams is angry. Devontae Adams wants out. He's done playing for the Raiders. He's got more targets than any of the Raider receivers this week or this season, and yet the press is making it seem like he's unhappy because he's not getting enough targets. That's not necessarily the case. Are they going? I think really when he speaks, it really is from the position of he's tired of losing. Yeah. He's tired of losing and not even being competitive, because right now they're not even being competitive. So I don't think he's going to be going anywhere. But Hunter Renfrow, if somebody can pick up his contract and wants his contract, there's a guy that's going to move. But I'll tell you what, it's a pretty big contract. So Raiders are going to have to give up quite a bit. They're either going to have to pay, part of it, all of it, or there's going to be a lot of concession there if somebody wants to take Hunter Renfrow off their hands. It took until, I think, third quarter last game. They're not doing a thing, and they finally throw the ball to Hunter Renfrow, and it's a shame because that's a waste of talent.
Yeah, it's one of the more kind of perplexing, I don't want to say downfalls or anything. I'm not writing Hunter Renfrow's career off or anything, but this was a Cooper Cup 2.0 just a few years ago, and now he's MIA. And just to kind of piggyback on your the blood paper analogy, I remember hearing a story, and I'm almost positive this is true, but only one person died in the Boston Massacre. Which, look, a loss of life is terrible, but just kind of shows you how things can be misconstrued. And obviously in football and in sports, especially sports media, and unfortunately in a lot of media these days, certain things get maybe over exaggerated in order for you to either buy it or click it. But yeah, so it's always, even with, as a baseball fan, the baseball trade deadline for me is always kind of the craziest, the wackiest. You hear kind of crazy stories and things like that. The one team I am going to look at, though, I think is two teams in the AFC North, and both of them need running back help. I'm looking at Baltimore and Cleveland. Now, obviously, Baltimore did lose J.K. Dobbins. Baltimore is kind of where aging veterans go to die. Yeah. It sounds terrible. And it sounds so distant, but it's true. And I shouldn't say go to die, but go off into the sunset. And I think Derrick Henry, Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson in the same backfield, that would be, I mean, you got thunder and lightning just right there. So that would be very interesting. And then the other side, Cleveland obviously losing Nick Chubb. And I believe Ford went down. He looked very good this week. However, he did leave the game. I don't have a full prognosis on him, but I feel like a lot of teams have to look at it and go, we can never have enough running backs. Now, what are these teams willing to give up? Because as we said, or as we talked about, I think before we hit record, it's going to be hard for some of these teams that, maybe 2 or 3 wins for them to part with a first round pick. They want to get Barkley. They want to get Henry. They want to get, maybe a Chase Young. I don't know. But at least the top 2 names, you're going to have to give up 1, maybe 2 first round picks. And I don't think a whole lot of teams are ready and willing, or at least teams that are staring down a top 10, top 15 pick, especially with kind of the perceived diminishment in value in a lot of running backs. It's going to be interesting, though. But the one thing I would like to see is push this back a month, because I think that kind of opens things up. There's probably only 5 or 6 teams right now that are definitively selling. There are a lot of teams that go, you know what? I mean, look, if you're in the NFC South and you're not Carolina, I don't care what you're in the race. Kind of same thing in the AFC North. There's just a lot of things up in the air, and it's kind of difficult to get a gauge on whether or not you should be buying or selling. So I guess that would be one little tweak I would like to throw in there. But with that being said, it is time to dive in and look ahead to week 8. And I got to warn you folks, the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games we're going to be talking about big spreads, or at least big NFL spreads. And of course, we do them chronologically. So we are going to start, well, at least we start chronologically, I should say. We'll start Thursday night football. It is going to be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They're heading to Buffalo for Thursday night football. The Bills are 8.5-point favorites. The over-under sits at 42. Raider Jim, what are your thoughts?
Possible rain, very slight chance of rain, but that's one thing to throw out there in the beginning. And it's probably, as I've been watching the baseball playoffs and some of the football games as well, it's starting to turn cold anywhere east of the Mississippi. So it's going to be a little cool, possible chance of rain, nothing too inclement out there. But last week, the Buffalo Bills played against a very, very, very bad Bill Belichick team. The spread, I believe, was 8.5, might even been 9 by the time it was kickoff. I'm sure that I wasn't the only one who said, well, of course Buffalo's going to cover. Give me a point, but that's 7.5. Of course they're going to cover that. And then they went out and they not only lost, they gave up 29 points, I believe it was, to Bill Belichick's team, which has been offensively anemic the entire year. So who shows up wearing Buffaloes on the side of their helmet tomorrow? Probably the same guys that have been there for the first part of the year, those first 7 weeks. Tampa Bay, same thing. Which group of Pirates is going to come in? The Pirates that are have sabers in their teeth and they're going to run out there and just wreak havoc on Buffalo? Or are they going to be the Keystone Cop Pirates that run into each other and fall down, trip over their own feet? Probably a good combination of everything. But I think what's going to happen is Tampa Bay, I'm going to take an extra half point on that. Tampa Bay covers at 9 in Buffalo. And I don't know that we're going to see as many points as we should, but I'll even take a half a point there and say it'll go over 41.5. But Buffalo, again, both teams, head scratchers. Which team is going to show up? Weather has probably got the best bet tomorrow. So just go ahead and bet that it's going to be a little damp and cool, and you're going to collect on that one.
Yeah, and as I've said probably multiple times, I think I said it with Miami when they played Buffalo. If you're a Florida team, or if you're a South team, that doesn't have cold weather, you were so excited to be in Buffalo in October or early November, because like you said, you're talking about only rain, and it'll be maybe a little chilly, but it won't be anything that I think will affect the game, or at least temperature wise I don't think should affect the game. I'm with you on the cover. I am, or on the spread side of things. I'm going to buy a half a point as well. Buffalo, I don't think I wouldn't take Buffalo +9 or -9 over Carolina right now. I just think they're way too
Right.
up and down. And I would not be surprised to see Buffalo win 31-3. And you kind of tip your hat and you go, hey, you know what? Okay, this is, like you said, this is the Buffalo that showed up this week. But as a pessimist, I feel like it's in this season. I brought it up a lot last week. When it's so kind of up and down, just by default take the points, especially when you're looking at 9 points. Especially when you get in kind of into a situation where, maybe the Bills are up by 10 with a minute to go and Baker Mayfield, the game's over, but Baker Mayfield in soft prevent coverage, boom, takes them down. They score a touchdown, a meaningless touchdown, but hey, that 10-point spread just turned into 3. Everyone cashes. We're happy. So keep an eye on that. I am going to take the under 42 here. I just think overall, a lot of times in non-conference games, offensive coordinators, they're not necessarily going to open up the playbook. Not to say that Buffalo's playbook, or excuse me, Tampa Bay's playbook is very intense, but I don't think we're going to see the full offensive playbook against the Buccaneers. So I'm going to take the under. I see this one closer to, maybe 21-17, 20-17, something like that. But I think we stay under the 9 or 8.5, however you want to look at it. But yeah, I do like Tampa Bay +9 under 42 there for Thursday Night Football. So moving all the way to the other side of the week, I told you we were going to start chronologically, but we are definitely not going to continue it. We are going to Monday Night Football. We're heading to the Motor City. The Las Vegas Raiders head to face the Detroit Lions. The Lions are 8-point favorites. The over-under 45.5. And as I always say, if we're going to talk Raiders, nobody gets the first word besides Raider Jim. The floor is yours.
Yeah, best money I've made in the 23-24 NFL season was when I decided, when you look at the cost of a ticket for an NFL game, I looked at 2 Raider games. Even if I had to travel, I was going to get a pretty good ticket in Chicago, even if I had to fly out there. And I decided to not go. And when I watched the Bears push around the Raiders, I was real happy I didn't spend that money. The other one was, well, if you could go to Detroit, because they were selling tickets for like $30 in the upper level for that game, I'm glad I didn't buy that ticket either. Now, what's going to happen against the Lions? The Lions, again, big disappointment last week, scoring 6 points. It took until the fourth quarter before they got those 6 points. But now they're playing the Raiders, who, again, we've already talked about. You and I were talking about it. They played against a Bears team starting a D2 quarterback and just got pushed around by that offensive line. Detroit needs to keep on its game if they want to make any chance of making, keep their name in the hat or in the running for a playoff spot, if you will. I think offensively, they're going to exploit the Raiders secondary like many teams do, in and out. And I also think when they open the running game, they're probably going to get to the Raiders defensive line. Max Crosby is a one-man show. He's the little Dutch boy running from side to side to side, trying to see if he can, how many holes can he fill all by himself? Well, it's not going to happen. And Max gives 110% every single play, and he's never missed a game, but the man can only do so much. And number 24, I can't recall his name right now, at the cornerback. I'll tell you what, I hope next time I go to a hotel, my pillow is as soft as the way he covers the wide receivers, because it is soft coverage, and he's always giving up 5, 6, 7. He makes the tackle, but he gives up way too many yards, especially when it's those situations where he should be playing a little tighter. Nothing off the Raiders' edges as far as defensive goes. What's going to happen in this game? Does Detroit cover 8? Probably, because I don't think the Raider offense is going to be able to score. I personally would stay away from the spread on this one, and an over-under of 45.5, it's going to go under, because even if the Detroit can put up 28 or 30, I don't see the Raiders scoring more than 17.
Do you know, is Jimmy G coming back?
I have not heard an announcement yet. And if that's the case, they might want to see if they can at least sign Brady for the weekend.
I mean, something. Because I was kind of in the camp of you got to start Hoyer. And full disclosure, I didn't really see I didn't get home till about midway through the third quarter of a lot of these games, and by then it wasn't on the red zone radar, if you will. I know O'Connell came in probably to clean up the mess, but it sounds like Hoyer started.
Awful.
Yeah, and I was kind of blasé about it, like, oh, okay, Hoyer's got to start. Like, no offense to Aiden O'Connell, but Hoyer's been there. Wow. I don't know what you do now, as you said. Tom Brady come down. You just I don't know, get Rich Gannon out of the booth. I don't know if he's still in the booth, but someone
One
who can
of
go
the
out there and swing it.
one of the Raider faithful on the Twitter feed that I follow, she comes from Wisconsin, the Milwaukee area, and was so excited on the weekend because she's a school teacher, so she's kind of stuck there in Milwaukee during the school year. And she was taking herself and her daughters. They were going to their first Raider game. They went to Detroit to Chicago to see the Raiders play. And that poor lady was so disappointed. And she said Hoyer looked absolutely worse in person than he could have on any broadcast.
Yikes. Yeah, that's and like I said, I don't think Aiden O'Connell gives you that much of a shot. On my side of things, I'm going to do something I very rarely do, but Vegas has declared war this gambling season, so the clubs are off. I'm going to buy a full point. I'm going to take Detroit -7. I think Detroit wins by a touchdown. Now the Monday Night Football, I think the atmosphere in Detroit, it could have been a lot better if they, I don't want to say, even if they performed last week. But I do think Dan Campbell is going to get these guys. I really liked what he said, in the press conference. He was exactly what you would expect. He goes, look, they beat us. They kicked our ass. And I think he's that guy that's what he says. He goes, look, they beat us up. Maybe we'll get another chance at him, but at the end of the day, we got to keep moving forward. I just really like Dan Campbell and what he's been able to do. So I do think he kind of gets this team back focused on, or at least pointing in the right direction. So I do see Detroit getting the job done. I am going to go over the 45.5. I just think even Detroit's defense, not that great. And I know, obviously the Raiders offense isn't going to light things up, but I could see maybe, 2 deep balls to Devontae Adams, at least setting the Raiders up. If they could get 14 points, I think we might be able to get to 45. I'm a little more confident on the spread side, but at the same time, I think last week I said it a few times, like all signs point to, it was the Green Bay Denver game. We were questioning, how is Green Bay only a 1-point favorite in this one? And I remember towards the end of my little analysis, I went, yeah, and everything points to Green Bay. So you should probably take Denver. It's like one of those things where as you say it in your head, you're going Brandon, but literally the opposite has happened. So wouldn't be terribly surprised to see the Raiders blow the door off the Lions, but that's mainly because of how the season has gone, more so than what I've seen out of the Raiders. But I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to be that guy that just goes, I'm going to bet chaos and anarchy, or at least not going to give y'all that that advice. Maybe I'll do that in my own time. But sticking in the AFC West, we are going to be talking about Sunday Night Football. This is the Chicago Bears. They're heading to Los Angeles to face the Chargers. The Chargers are 8.5-point favorites. The over-under is 46.5. Raider Jim, what are your thoughts?
You just hit on something towards the end of that last coverage on that Raider Lions game. Maybe we employ the George Costanza theory of do the opposite of what you would normally do. So you go.
I'm really close, Raider Jim. I'm really close.
That's a thought. Chicago -8.5 on the road. Now they played in a brisk weather. The sun was out. It was a beautiful day in Chicago. With this D2 quarterback, if you will, but the offensive line came around. That was good for the Bears in many ways. One, not only did that young man execute and call a great game, he didn't call the game, but he executed a great game. Every one of those players, the offensive linemen were just propping him after everything. Something didn't go quite right, they were propping him. He made a good play, a good throw. They're picking him up and throwing him in the air. That did wonders, I think, for the Chicago Bears. And if you look at what the Chargers did, like you said, we had 41 points on the board going into the halftime against the Chiefs. and they couldn't cover the 48. Neither team could cover the 48. What's going to happen this week? Probably a lot of the same thing, because I have a feeling that Chicago offensive line is not going to let up. And I think they're going to come out and be just as effective against the Chargers. And speaking of the Chargers and the Charger defense, hats off to Khalil Mack, who still plays like Khalil Mack from when he wore silver and black. But Joey Bosa, I'm telling you, it's real obvious that he is not playing at 100%. He looked gassed by the third quarter. And he played, he gives it just like his brother does, just like a Max Crosby. But you can see that he doesn't have those same 5 gears that he used to have a couple years ago. And he's just tired, worn out. And I think he's actually playing through injury right now. Herbert's good, but again, every time something comes up like the game last week, he's going to continue to be referred to as Philip Rivers 2.0. And it's a shame, because I think he's a good kid. He's a great kid. He's a talented kid. Are the Chargers going to be his one and only team? Boy, for his sake, I hope not, but it's probably going to turn out that way. Game time Sunday. I think the Bears. Give me the Bears plus 8.5, maybe another 0.9. I think they're going to cover on this one. The over-under is 45.5. Now, I do think they can get over 45 for sure. So give me 1/2 point on that. Over 45. But I mean, the Bears, I think they're going to put up some points. Maybe not 40, maybe not 30, but do they put up 20? Yeah, I think they do, even in a losing cause.
Yeah, I really like Chicago in this one, and that kind of scares me the way the season's gone. But this is borderline sprinkle on the money line type stuff. Because the reports coming out of Charger camp are not good. And there's a lot of talk about Brandon Staley has lost the locker room. The defense essentially doesn't pay him any mind, which is not good, because Brandon Staley is a defensive coach. So those are concerning reports. Once again, anonymous sources, things like that. Of course, you could take it with a grain of salt. But at the same time, I am kind of one of those believers where if there's smoke, there's fire, because sometimes these things are looking like they are adding up. I will give the Chargers credit. Now, unfortunately for my bet, they did make some very good halftime adjustments. I think Travis Kelce had nine receptions for 150 yards at halftime, and he was pretty much kept under control after that. So they did kind of adjust and get things done. But on the Bears side of things, wow, Badgett looked really, really good for a kid coming out of, Shepherdshire or Shepherd University. I think the last team he played was the Colorado School of Mines, folks. The Colorado School of Mines. I didn't even know that school existed and that they fielded a football team. All right. Anyways, besides that, he went out and obviously did what he needed to do. Got a lot of help from his, offensive line and his skill position players. But I do want to kind of remind everyone, and every year I remind everyone, I call it the Austin Davis effect. About 7-8 years, maybe 9 years ago, the Rams, when they were still in St. Louis, they start this kid, Austin Davis. He's a no-name kid. He was a rookie, I think, out of Southern Miss. Plays 3 or 4 games. He looks like the second coming of Kurt Warner. Get ready for the Disney movies. They're lining up, blah, blah, blah. And then falls off the map. NFL teams eventually get film on you, and they figure you out at this level. I'm not saying that this is the case right now. I don't think the Chargers are the team to kind of expose this unknown entity, if you will, because I can't imagine there's a whole lot of film on the Shepherd versus Colorado School of Mines. I didn't find that on ABC. That past Sunday. Or Saturday, I should say. So I'm not sure there's a ton of film on this kid. I think he's still able to go out and kind of hide behind that aura of, the unknown. And I think the kid's really athletic. And he's got a good arm on it. And I think the Bears are pointed in the right direction. I don't know if they're going to get very far, but I just think the Chargers are a wayward team. I would not be surprised if Brandon Staley is does not make it to the end of the season. That's how bad I think things are going to get with the Chargers. Give me the Bears plus 8.5. And like I said, if you find yourself with $5 or, a $10, put it on the money line. I don't know what that number is, but at plus 8.5, I would have to imagine we're looking close to plus 300. On the over under side of things, I do like the under here. I do wonder if we are going to see enough points out of the Chargers, because look, their offense kind of got muddied down in the second half as well. Couldn't put up a single point. So I do just wonder if that's the case. Talk about it all the time. There's going to be at least 50-50 Bears fans, so this isn't a true home game or road game, however you want to look at it. But yeah, I like Chicago a lot, which, like I said, scares me. And I do like the under. But sticking in or with our final NFL or AFC West game, it is a all AFC West matchup. Excuse me. It is the Kansas City Chiefs. They're heading to Mile High as 7.5-point favorites. The over-under sits at 47. Raider Jim, what do you like?
One quick thing on that game, that Chicago game. The other thing I want to bring up about the quarterback, kid has swag.
Yes, he does.
Let me tell you, he finally got into it about halfway through the first quarter, going into the second quarter. He was feeling it. He would make a good play. He'd start waving on the crowd. And I think that the players really took to that and appreciated it. So watch that young man. And to your point about not a lot of film on this kid, guarantee you, not only is there not a lot of film, the film they have is from last week, and most people are going to go, yeah, they beat up the Raiders. Big deal. And that's probably, that's not 100% what teams are thinking, because Raiders are, an NFL team. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. Kansas City at Denver. Well, there's no way Denver's going to win 2 in a row. They just can't win 2 in a row. But they weren't going to win last week either. No way they were going to beat the Packers. At least that's what I said. But and there's no way, again, here we go. There's no way they're going to beat the Chiefs. The Chiefs are going to come in. Chiefs are playing well. Again, as it was last week, the real bet here is, will Taylor Swift be in a booth somewhere? Who knows? And how many times are they going to mention her? Are they going to put the camera on her? Are they going to show her doing touchdown dances with Mahomes' wife? The whole thing is appalling to me. But here I am talking about it. Kansas City's going to go in. They're going to have a great offensive game for 4 quarters, not just for one half. They're not going to have to come from behind in the second half. Defense is going to hold well. And as far as the Broncos, I don't know if it doesn't speak so much about the Broncos, what they did against Green Bay. I think it speaks more to what kind of a team Green Bay really has, personally. So when they go into Mile High, the Chiefs here, I don't think the altitude's going to bother them. Do they cover by 6.5? Yeah, I can see them winning by an entire touchdown in this one against Denver, because I think their defense is going to really, really shut down the Broncos. Over under on this one is 47 points. Kind of a tough one, but not really. I don't see Denver coming up and throwing up a whole bunch of points. They might be able to hit 21, maybe, but I think and I think I can see it. You might want to go over 46.5. They might be able to push it to a 27-21 game, and there's your 48. But I don't see it going too out of control on this one. Give me over 46.5 on this one. Under 6.5, I'll just keep the spread the way it is for Kansas City.
Yeah, I like Kansas City to cover here as well. I think they haven't figured it out totally. But at the same time, we've talked about the Eric Bieniemy, vacancy, and kind of getting used to a new coordinator for Mahomes, and I think he is. And then also too, just I don't want to gloss over it in terms of the Taylor Swift thing. At least on my side of things, I don't want to get the Swifters or Swifties mad at me. Personally, I think it's ridiculous. I can't stand it. At the same time, I don't blame Taylor Swift. I blame the media. I blame the producers.
Oh, right.
I blame the people. Yeah. So, and I've gotten a lot of coworkers who are like, "Oh, it's not her fault." You're 100% correct. She has every right to go to the games like every other girlfriend, friend, wife, whatever you want to call themselves. and we don't see them every 2 seconds. So that's more of a shot at the producers and all that stuff getting their early, ratings or whatever. But do what you got to do. Anyways, back to the game on the field. I do like Kansas City, like I said, to get the job done here. They're definitely moving in the right direction. They're 6-1. One of the best things about Kansas City is that even though they probably not played anywhere close to an A game, they're 6-1. And that's very similar to kind of with the Eagles. Like, okay, look, we haven't come anywhere near to what we're capable of, but we're 6-1. And I think the Chiefs are going to feel good about that. Maybe Denver's still kind of riding high off of their win last week. So I do like Kansas City. I like the under here only because I think the Kansas City offense, they still haven't fully hit their stride yet. They really need to get the run game going. I think that's the key for them. And I'll tell you what, a Kansas City team that figures it out offensively, plus the defense they have, that's scary. This might be, if the offense can fully figure it out, which I expect, this I think is the best Chiefs team Patrick Mahomes has had overall. So once again, I think you see it there. The under, another reason why I think a division opponent, there's going to be a lot of familiarity between these two, even though I know Sean Payton just got here, but they got a lot of familiarity between with the players and stuff like that. So I think that will keep it under. And you know what? I think Denver's, offensive output last week might cover him for the next 2 weeks. So with that being said, give me the under. So shifting our attention to the NFC East, my jurisdiction, it is those Philadelphia Eagles. They are heading to, let's say our nation's capital, even though it's not technically, it'll be Landover, but they'll be facing the Washington Commanders. The Eagles are 6.5-point favorites. The over-under sits at 43.5. And really the big news, at least midweek from the Eagles, is bringing in Kevin Byard, one of the first kind of big trade chips that has been brought in, a 2-time All-Pro. The Eagles give up Terrell Edmonds, who is a lesser than safety, with all due respect, and a 6th and a 7th round pick. Wow. You would have thought that the Titans have learned their lesson after letting A.J. Brown go, but we will be here for it. So good there. The Eagles did need help in that situation. I really did want Budda Baker, but I think at the end of the day, this is probably the better option. You're not having a guy coming off injury, and Budda Baker is going to command a much higher price tag than what Byard did. So I think the Eagles defense moving in the right direction, and that's kind of scary for the rest of the league because last week the Eagles defense was an absolute menace. They only gave up 10 points. Obviously, 17 was on the scoreboard, but it was a Jalen Hurts pick 6. Excuse me. That put that extra one. So they held, one of the most potent offense, if not the most potent offense, to all of 10 points. They got after Tua. They were able to contain the speedy wide receivers with a very patchwork secondary. Very, very impressive stuff out of the Eagles defense. On the offensive side, okay, but the turnovers need to be figured out. I don't think it will cost them. I mean, obviously turnovers will always cost you, but I don't think it cost them a victory this weekend against Washington. But after this, the Eagles are about to go through that gauntlet I talked about where you're going to have, Dallas, Kansas City, San Francisco bye week, not in those exact order, but it's going to be a bit of a gauntlet the next 3, 4, 5 weeks for the Eagles. So I think this is their chance to kind of hopefully get out all those kinks and finish off the season sweep of the Commanders. However, with that being said, I am not going to tell anybody that the Eagles can cover 6.5 until they clean up their turnover issues. I think the Commanders, I think the Eagles win this game. But like I said, until the Eagles offense can protect the ball just a little bit better, I'm going to, generally err on the side of caution. So give me Washington. In terms of the over-under, I like the under here. I don't quite know how Washington's going to score points in this one, and that may be a big reason why the Eagles cover no matter what the offense does, because it seems like they could just fall forward and they'll have 21 points. The defense, I could see this being a 21-6, 21-10 type game, so give me the under. I think the Eagles defense is going to be a problem, and a problem for the league, not for the fans of the Eagles. But Raider Jim, what are your thoughts? Birds head to Washington.
Well, real simple. My little girl jumped up on my shoulder and she said, everything he's saying is absolutely right. So
Perfect.
she's in agreement with you 110%. Philadelphia, I will tell you, I was so wrong in every way when they played the Dolphins last week. And hats off to them. They played one hell of a game. To shut down that Dolphin offense the way they did was just amazing. It was poetry in motion, if you will, for lack of a better phrase I can come up with. Fantastic game. Washington on the other side of it, they have the dubious honor of, in trivia now for the rest of this year and for a few years to come. Hey, when the Giants broke their however many quarters it was without a touchdown, who did they break that streak against? Oh, that powerhouse Washington Commander team. And they gave up 2 touchdowns in 1 quarter to these guys. So, well, you got to live with that. Washington, I think, apparently has a little more work to do than you or I thought they would at this stage of the game. This is it. This is week 8. 50% of the season is over. It's no more, well, we'll be able to get a better read on teams in the next 2 or 3 weeks. Nope. Now you're playing for your real positions in the playoffs or to make those playoffs. Philadelphians going to come in. I don't even think I need to buy a point, take it to under 6. I think they're just going to cover because Washington's not going to score. Slight chance of rain, very slight chance of rain at game time. I don't think it's going to be enough to impact the game. And Philadelphia, if it does rain, ground and pound, baby. Let's just ground and pound. Keep it on the ground. Let it get down to 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, because you know what's going to happen then. We're going to go into the rugby scrum and we're going to get the first down. And Washington's not going to be able to defend that. So give me Philadelphia to cover at the 6.5, because I'm sure they'll cover by 7. 43.5, that's my only concern, is I don't see Washington scoring. They could not score against the New York Giants. So they're not going to score against Philadelphia Eagles, even with their duct tape and chewing gum secondary. They're playing a hell of a game right now. This is Philadelphia's game all the way around, but I'm going to still go under 43.5 on this one.
Agreed. Hats off to Sean Desai, the new defensive coordinator. First time in that position, first time calling defensive plays. He has been magnificent, even in that Jets. Every single game this season, any faults you can put on a unit, unfortunately, the offense has taken the lion's shares of those, and that needs to be talked about as well. And also, you brought up the tush push, the brotherly shove. Love to see Nick Sirianni finding the cameras in the press conference saying if everybody could do it, they would do it. And I think that's, once again, they do it better. And you're just going to have to live with that. Sorry. Or at least for the rest of this year. We'll see how next year goes. But moving on, sticking in that NFC East, it is going to be the Los Angeles Rams. They're heading to the Lone Star State to face the Dallas Cowboys. Cowboys are 6.5 point favorites. The over under is 45.5. Obviously Dallas came off their bye week last week. I have been a little bit impressed with Dak, and I would say this only because he's always been high and low, very high mountains, high peaks, low valleys. This year, not so much. Now, unfortunately, he's had some games. Look, the Niners, that game, it's kind of, you brought it up a few years ago. It's kind of, or a few weeks ago, the Olympic scoring. Take out the highest, take out the lowest, and look at everything else. I think overall, he's done very well. And I had questions about the run game. I thought that they were just all in on Tony Pollard, and I didn't fully agree with that. I'm still kind of not fully in there with Tony Pollard kind of being the main guy getting the rock. I think it's too many points. The Rams obviously have had their issues, still have their issues. I'm going to buy a 0.5 point. Get me the Rams +7. I think Dallas wins this game. I do think the Rams can keep this competitive. Matt Stafford still got some bullets left. He knows. Puka Nacua, we thought he was just going to kind of disappear when Cooper Kupp came back he might be more prevalent, and that's kind of scary. So no Diggs as well for Dallas. So it's going to be an interesting game here, but I like the Rams to hold on and cover that +7. Just cover myself, maybe even by a full point, get +7.5 if you can find it. In terms of the over under, I am going to go over here. I do think we see some points being scored. The Cowboys, look, they're going to get after the quarterback, but if the quarterback has 2-3 seconds of a clean pocket, more than likely going to complete a pass. And more often than not, I think that might be the case here if they can kind of focus in on the right double teams, mainly on Micah Parsons and things like that. But I like the Rams +7 and over 45.5. Raider Jim, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, first it was the Philadelphia Eagles and Washington or excuse me, Philadelphia and Miami that I picked last week. Then I also went on record and said, there's no way the Steelers are going to roll in to the West Coast, play in a dome against the Rams and win this game. Well, they won it and they won it handily. And watching the way the Rams played that game is what I'm keying on because Dallas is a better team than Pittsburgh all the way around. There's no ifs, ands, or maybes or what team is going to show up. Dallas is going to show up. Dallas is at home. And did Dallas have a bye last week? So they are also going to be very, very rested because they've just had 2 weeks to just hang around Dallas. Excuse me. I think the offense is going to play well. I think they are going to get after the Rams quarterback. Nakua, as you were mentioning, and I've started to look, 8 receptions, 150 yards, just over 150 yards. That kid's having a fantastic rookie of the year type season. But even with that, they only scored 17 points. So he's not making the difference, and that's not a dig on him. It's got to be the total package when you're playing the teams that have the defense like the Steelers, that have a better defense like the Cowboys. And I think that's going to be the difference in this one. I think all the way around, Dallas is just more of a total package. Rams are still a little bit inconsistent. And if they can show the right schemes on defense, they're going to get the quarterback out of the pocket, make him run, and cut down his target options real quick. So what's going to happen? Dallas is going to cover on this one, but I will take a whole point on this one and go -5.5. I think it'll be maybe a 6-point game. Over 45.5. Sure, I'll give you that because I can see it being, maybe give me a half point on that one. I see it being a 28-21 type of a contest, but I do think this is going to be Dallas's home game all the way around.
Yeah, I just looked at the schedule as well. The Cowboys haven't played since that Niners game. So this is another team. I kind of talked about San Francisco. Now obviously that didn't go too well, but I said San Francisco playing Minnesota. They're just looking for someone to punch. Might be the same case for the Cowboys, except they've been kind of locked in solitary confinement for a full week, probably just on that game on repeat. So I think you might be on the right or better track than I am on this one, but we shall see. Moving on to the battle of fake New Yorks. It is the New York Jets. They are heading to the New York Giants. And yes, this game, of course, will be in New Jersey, hence the fake New Yorks. But the Jets, the quote unquote road team, they are 2.5-point favorites. And the over under, 36.5, folks. Get your shootout ready. But no, in this one, obviously the Jets have improved and have looked better since some of those earlier matchups. I mainly look at the Patriot game. And the Giants went out, and obviously offensively they were not impressive, but I think the bigger question in Giants country, or Big Blue country, however they refer to themselves, you have to start Tyrod Taylor, right? I mean, because everybody out there with 2 eyes and a football brain can tell you Tyrod Taylor gives you a better chance of winning. So I don't know the exact situation, but if Tyrod's playing, I like the Giants. I think the Giants have enough pieces overall. Saquon hasn't been totally dominant, but this is a guy that's still technically running for a contract. I think he has a lot to prove. Daniel Jones, unfortunately, I think he is the big issue. Tyrod Taylor He's not going to go out though for 350, 400 yards, but he's going to protect the football. He's going to be the, sorry, quarterbacks, cover your ears. He's going to be the game manager. But you know what? That's what the Giants need. They don't need a Tua. They don't need a Patrick Mahomes. I mean, they'd love one of those, but they don't need that to be at least competitive. So I like the Giants, and this is another situation for me where in a very unpredictable season, just give me the points. It just feels safe. I'll buy a half a point. If y'all know me, I love the +2.5, +3s, buying half points. So give me the Giants +3. In terms of the over-under, it's almost one of those where it's okay, it's almost too low for you to take the under. I think I'm still going to take the under. I don't know. I mean, this is a Giants team that scored 14 points last week and won by a touchdown. So who am I to sit here and throw an over on this matchup? But yeah, I'll take the under, but I'm definitely more confident once again with the caveat of Tyrod Taylor starting. If Daniel Jones is starting, burn your television set before you watch this game. But anyways, yeah, I like the Giants with Tyrod to cover the 3, buying a half a point and stay under the 36.5 just because it doesn't seem right to pick an over for these two teams. But Raider Jim, what are your thoughts? Jets kind of at the Giants.
I think you're jaded by the fact they really scored touchdowns last week. But you got to remember.
Touchdown drunk? I'm touchdown drunk, aren't I?
Touchdown drunk, and it was against Washington. The way I'm seeing this is they scored 14 points before halftime last week, and then they started their new streak and got no points the second half of that game.
I like it. That actually makes a lot of sense.
And I'm thinking by the end of this one, they'll be back to they'll put up a field goal here, a field goal there, but it'll be they're back at it 6 quarters without scoring a touchdown. They're on their way to another streak. I think the Jets are a better team all the way around, and I think they're going to play like it. I think they do cover 2.5. I think that's pretty reasonable. I actually might even, if I was the guy that was really being the professional prognosticator, I might have given them at least 3.5. I think they're just going to be that much better because they're not traveling. They're just going to go in. They're going to get to play football. They can put up points, but the over/under, like you, boy, that's a bad number, 36.5. But I'm still going to buy a point. I'll still buy a point, make it 37.5. But I think it's going to be the under for sure. I just don't see the Giants doing any better against. I don't see them duplicating the effort that they had against the Commanders last week. Those 2 touchdowns. I think the Giants or the Jets are going to just be much better all the way around and much better prepared. And I believe they're coming off a bye as well.
I think so. Because I'm thinking in my head, where did they play? But I believe there were 6 total teams on
there was a lot of buys. So, yeah. So I just and nobody was flying to Germany. Nobody was coming back from Germany. So yeah, I just think that this was going to be A, boring, and B, all Jets. Now, the other thing to keep in mind, and it might you might want to think about this one yourself, 40% chance of rain by game time. So again, add water into the mix. Not good for anybody on that over/under.
Yeah, and I just saw a pretty crazy stat. I mean, I don't know if crazy is the right word. It's actually kind of sad. But I was checking to see if there was any news on who was going to start Tyrod Taylor, just a bunch of kind of articles about this and that. But one of the articles, Tyrod Taylor is the first Black quarterback to win a game for the New York Giants in their 99-year history. Goodness gracious. That's whew, I mean, good for him, but I don't know. That seems doesn't seem right. But anyways, moving on. We have a matchup, an interesting one here. The Joe Burrow-led Cincinnati Bengals. They're heading to Levi Stadium. They will be facing the San Francisco Giants, who are really looking like they want to punch somebody. The Niners are 5.5 point favorites. However, when I put this line in, there was not word about Brock Purdy. So that line may be much different. But for when I put this together, it was 5.5, and the over under sat at 45. And I think that's the main kind of caveat of this game. As of right now, it sounds like Sam Darnold is going to get this start. Raider Jim, what are your thoughts? Bengals at the Niners.
Tell you what, Cincinnati started out slow, and as you and I both know, because you and I follow the thoroughbreds, sometimes the horse you want to watch is that horse that was a favorite going into the gate and starts out slow, starts at the backs, moves up a little bit in the pack, going around that first turn, they move up a little bit more. And then as it starts getting closer and closer, further into the race, all of a sudden that horse that looked like it wasn't going to hold its odds as the favorite starts making a move. Cincinnati's won 2 in a row. They're doing okay now. They didn't start out with a target on their back at the top and, oh my God, we're undefeated. What are we going to do now? Probably one of the best things that could have happened to them. And I thought that they were done, but now I'm thinking they're just that horse. They're going to be in the race when it comes around to the home turn. San Francisco, on the other hand, and you talked about it already, Purdy is in concussion protocol. Will he play? Won't he play? Probably not. It's the best thing they can do to not play anybody in concussion protocol. That's my personal opinion. However, it's not just the physical damage. One of the articles I read earlier today, he is mentally, he's already got it in his head because he was shouldering everything against the Vikings. So much so, and I'm sure it happens more than we hear, but we don't hear it often enough. One of the linebackers was counseling him on it was not his fault. You've got a defensive player hearing this poor young man so distraught and down on himself and shouldering all the blame that you've got a linebacker coming up, putting his arm around him. Hey, kid. It ain't you. It's all of us. Yeah, you made some plays, but it's all of us. But if he's already got that mindset, one mistake, one sack, who knows what's going to happen? It's going to throw him back into that shaky. That's what makes a guy pause. It makes you pause when you drop back in that pocket. It makes you pause. You say, I only need to get to the 15 for a first down. I don't know if I can make it, or you hesitate that step before you do take off. Those are the things that are going to go against Purdy right now if he can't take a deep breath and go in and feel confident about everything. Also, the other thing you look at in that Minnesota game, and we talked about last week, McCaffrey wasn't 100%. McCaffrey only had 45 yards. 15 carries for 45 yards. Those are Josh Jacobs numbers, and that's nothing to brag about. Let me tell you. I don't mind saying it. I didn't even bother to go there before. So I think what's going to happen is give me a point. Cincinnati covers at 6.5. Over under 45. I think it's going to go, I would say over 44.5. I can see this being 24-21, 27-21, because I think Cincinnati's going to put up some points. Weather in San Francisco is going to be cool and dry, but no chance for rain or anything else.
Yeah, and I did just check, at least according to Bovada, the 49ers have dropped to a 3-point favorite. So yeah, even better. And you know me, 3-point spreads. You know, the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to buy a 0.5 point. Give me Cincinnati plus 3.5. This is another situation, especially with Sam Darnold. Now, this is an interesting one gambling wise because it's almost a double gamble. This line right now is a questionable line. And I mean that in terms of Brock Purdy is questionable. The minute Brock Purdy is ruled out, I think we get closer to pick 'em and maybe even
money line.
Cincinnati. Yeah, Cincinnati becomes a 1.5 point favorites. I don't think it moves crazy because San Francisco is still incredibly talented. So it's kind of one of those right now. Like are you gambling on whether or not Purdy plays? It's kind of, I don't know. It doesn't feel right to kind of take that side of things. But look, I think Cincinnati, as you said, is figuring it out. And this is a team, they had a week last week. I think Burrow looked much better the last 2 weeks before the bye. At least not a situation where you went, you're questioning whether or not he should be out there. Hopefully he's gotten some good rest and, gotten himself ready to go. And everything's kind of working itself out. I like the Bengals in this one, especially, like I said, plus 3.5. I like that a lot. And look, I don't like to compound things, but Jake Moody has been struggling for the San Francisco 49ers, their place kicker. He did come in and knock through, I think it was like a 45, 50-yarder Monday night, but his season's been really rough. And you know what? I love the locker room coming around and saying, look, it wasn't on him last week, and it wasn't on him this week, blah, blah, blah. Very dissimilar to what we saw to DeAndre Hopkins a few weeks back. But so that's something also to keep in mind. Field goal kicking might be an issue for the Niners. But yeah, I like Cincinnati plus 3.5. Over under, it's so tough because I think if we go over, then Cincinnati wins. But I still think San Francisco has enough on the defensive side to keep this kind of at like a mud fight or a grappling session, if you will. I could see this being a 20-17 San Francisco. Jake Moody, puts the demons aside and kicks a walk-off field goal. And of course, 20-17 or even 24-21. No, let's go 23-20 will keep us under that 45. So I'll take the under in this one, but I do like Cincinnati plus 3.5, or really wherever you're going to find it. As long as you're getting points with Cincinnati.
And to that, and thank you for letting me know that line changed. And of course, if it's going to be minus 5.5 when I saw it, but you're telling me it's down to 3.
3 is on Bovada. Yes.
I'm with you. I'm going to adjust mine then, but I will still take the plus 3.5 for Cincinnati.
Yeah, it's kind of unfortunate. I don't want to see anyone get hurt. Like I said, I'm not a Niners fan. I don't want to see anyone get hurt. You want to see everyone. You want to see the best players play. But you know what? Look, Sam Darnold, he can go out there and throw the ball. He's got plenty of weapons. I'm not totally writing them off, but Brock Purdy's the better option, period. Second to last game we'll be talking about, it is the Minnesota Vikings. They are heading to Green Bay to face the Packers. Minnesota 1.5 point favorite. Over under sits at 43. I'll get this one started. Obviously, this is a big time divisional matchup in a division that's just, look, Lions look good, obviously, but everybody else is just at best average. I liked what I saw out of Minnesota. Obviously, when you bring down the 49ers, I like what I saw out of Brian Flores' defense. Jordan Love, it's all going to kind of come down on Jordan Love. I talked about the blitz rate. I talked about what Brian Flores is going to let you get away with. I think they're going to force Jordan Love to go deep. And I don't think that will behoove him. I like Minnesota here. I'm just going to go money line. I don't really like taking any spreads under 2 just because I don't want to get some weird safety or some weird scoregami or a missed extra point to be the reason why I missed a bet or lost a bet. So give me Minnesota money line. And in terms of the over under, I am going to stay under. Both of these offenses are just, average at best. And I think both of these teams have a situation where, like I talked about earlier, they're not going to fully open up the playbook, maybe play it a little close to the chest. I don't want to call this an elimination game, but it kind of is. We're getting to that point where teams are going to have to kind of start falling out of the race, if you will. This is kind of like maybe a strike one game and maybe only have 2 or 3 strikes in those games going forward. But Raider Jim, what are your thoughts? Vikings heading to Lambeau.
Yeah, like I say, it wasn't so much how good Denver was last week. It was Green Bay showed its true colors. Rain is likely in Lambeau Field when when the game starts this coming week. Minnesota, I think, played the game they needed to play, as you alluded to, especially against an opponent like San Francisco, where there's my other game where I said, no way that when I started out saying there's no way, but as I told you at the beginning, I did have a change of heart and said, no, Minnesota's going to cover, and we're going to go over on this one. I think Minnesota, I take them on the money line all day long on this game right now going into Green Bay. You made a comment that they're going to force him to go deep. He only had 194 yards against Denver. for goodness sakes, that's not a defensive juggernaut out there. They're not a bad team, but at the same time, you know, that is to say something. And he's going to not have success against Minnesota. There's just no way. Green Bay, unfortunately, and for the fans at Lambeau, are going to have to sit through another one in the rain. I like Minnesota on the money line on this one. Over under at 43. I do think it's going to go over 42 and a half on this one. I'll take that because I can see this being 24 to 21, 24 to 20, something like that. But Minnesota's going to pull this one out.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. And, you know, this might be the first time that Packer fans in 20 years, 25 years are going to have to deal with a average quarterback. You know, once again, with due respect to Jordan Love, but, you know, to go from Favre to Aaron Rodgers, those are big shoes to fill. And not closing the book on Jordan at all or anything like that, but we are to be getting to, yeah, we're getting towards the end of the book, at least it looks like, but who knows, maybe there's a sequel. So final game we'll be talking about, and I'll be honest, the only reason I put this one in is it's interesting to me. It's a matchup between the top two picks from this past year's draft. It's going to be the Houston Texans. They're heading to Carolina. The Houston Texans, road favorites. Yeah, I can't remember the last time I said that. Exactly. Houston will be 3-point favorites. The over-under is 43. Raider Jim, what are your thoughts? CJ Stroud versus Bryce Young.
Yeah, you know, it's not these guys' fault, especially these young guys. It's not CJ Stroud's fault. All the press he gets, he of course you want to be the number one guy. You want to be the top pick. You want to be all that. You want to get that hype. But man, when you get there, you better hope that what you get hired into has a bunch of good guys around you to make you live up to that. Because right now, Carolina hasn't won. And, you know, everybody's going to boo him. They're going to hate the coaches. I'm sure they already do. Houston, on the other hand, they got nothing to lose. Houston -3. I'm not even going to worry about taking a point, taking a half a point, taking anything. Houston's going to go into town. They're going to cover at -3. And I think Carolina can put up enough points, maybe, but I still see this ending up being more like 28 to 14. Something like that. 42 points. 43 is kind of low, but I don't see it going over myself. Give me Houston -3. Too bad for Carolina, but their streak is going to continue, and under 43 on that one.
Yeah, love Frank Reich, did a lot for Philadelphia. I think he might just be in a little bit over his head there in Carolina, just not a whole lot to work with. Definitely not going to, you know, make any judgments on Bryce Young, I think, until it's fair to do so. And right now is not a fair situation. They always talk, you know, outside of the money, it's sometimes best for rookie quarterbacks to be mid to late round, first round picks, because you're usually either going to a situation, at the very least, you have a pretty good team around you, or you probably have a quarterback that you're going to sit back and mentor, or sit back behind, you know, I should say. And on Houston side of things, I like the Texans. I just think overall they're a better team. DeMeco Ryans, I think he's the real deal. At least on the head coach side of things. Obviously, we knew he was a defensive genius, a really smart guy as well. But Houston, the one thing I will somewhat worry about is the last 3 weeks or last 3 games, because Houston is another one of these teams that was on a bye last week. CJ Stroud, October 1st against Pittsburgh, 306 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. October 8th, 249 touchdowns, or 249 yards, 1 touchdown, no picks. October 15th, New Orleans, 199 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. We're regressing. And that's something, and now once again, I'm not, you know, oh, it's over, blah, blah, blah. But I want to see a get-right game. I want to see a turnover-less game from CJ Stroud. I want to see him be able to go back, drop back, throw for, you know, north of 200 yards, because I think CJ Stroud has actually looked like one of the best rookie quarterbacks we've seen in quite some time, at least in their rookie year, which is crazy to me because I thought this rookie quarterback class was average at best, and may still be, but CJ Stroud has looked really good overall this season. However, like I said, maybe regressing a little bit back to the norm. I'd like to see him clean things up a little bit, but I do think Houston, this is kind of a perfect get right game for them. And look, they're in a division that is it is wide open. Let's be honest. And I don't think they're able to do anything. This is a team that's definitely still in a rebuild, but give me Houston and what? Look, I'm gonna buy a half a point. You know how I do things. -2.5. You know, I am very. If I'm nothing, if I'm not predictable, give me Houston -2.5, and the over under sits at 43. I will take. Like you, I'll take the under. And once again, I need to see these offenses do more before I can go above a 43 number like that. So yeah, give me the under as well. But Raider Jim, final thoughts as we wrap up our week 8 edition of the NFL Weekly.
One final thought from the nation that I love and will live and die to all of the Raider Nation. Raider Nation is not going to make the playoffs, or the Raiders are not going to make the playoffs, and they're not going to make the playoffs until they A, get leadership quarterback, B, get leadership on the sidelines, get a better offensive coordinator, a better defensive coordinator again, or at least personnel, and first and foremost, until they have a balanced attack. Josh Jacobs, who I have not been happy with for the last couple seasons. Let me tell you where we're at with Josh Jacobs. He has to average 130 yards per game for the balance of the season to match his output from last year. Right now, he is averaging under 3 yards per carry, which is not for a. You know what? If you hold out and you come back and say, see, I'm worth it, that's one thing. But when you hold out and you come back and this is what you're doing, and then you even have the nerve to make a statement after one or two of the games, well, I'm tired of this. I'm tired of the losing thing. Well, you ought to figure out how to do a little more, get the ball downfield a little further than when they give it to you. Start earning your money. You know, we talk about that with the Padres, Padre bats, and for me, it's any athlete. I never have had the opportunity to hold a position in the corporate world where they give me a bunch of money up front and say, hope you can do the job. Not how it works. It shouldn't work that way. But, you know, this is what society and sports has created. So that is what it is. So that's my final thought as far as football goes. And as far as the state of the world goes, again, please keep everybody in mind in the Middle East. There are innocent victims on both sides of it, regardless of what your political beliefs are. And also in Eastern Europe, let's hope that a little peace and common sense starts to get instilled to everybody, including this very nation of ours, and we start making sense.
Amen. I know I work right by Miramar, and I don't know if it's just me or what, but there's a lot of activity in the air around Miramar. But yeah, I completely agree with that second part, and you know, the Raiders side of it, and I could be wrong, but I think I saw something that Josh Jacobs, think he might be the on pace to have the lowest rushing yards the year after he leads the league in rushing. That would be an NFL record. So not a good look there. My final thoughts, obviously, as we kind of alluded to it, look, it's week 8. We talk about it all the time. It's week 1. You know, we blink, it's week 10, and we go, whoa, that was quick. We blink again, and we're hungover from the Super Bowl. So once again, you just kind of take the moment, embrace the chaos. Now, once again, what do we always end? Raider Jim always ends our podcast, bet safe. And that's the thing. This is supposed to be for fun. This is supposed to be enjoyment. Don't do anything crazy. The NFL is the hardest sport that I know of to bet. And I don't think it's close. And guess what? It's got even more difficult this year. So just know that. Bet smart, bet safe, and hope that, you know, you win. And don't expect to. I remember my dad told me my 18th birthday, a lot of people got very, like, they couldn't believe my dad took me to the casino on my 18th birthday. But he wanted to teach me, hey, you know what? You're probably going to go here with your friends. Let me teach you how to gamble responsibly. One thing he told me before we walked in, he said, and this is mainly for just casinos, but it can also work for gambling as well. Gambling or playing blackjack, it's the only form of entertainment where you get to determine how much you pay. No one at that casino is dragging you to the ATM unless you made a promise you didn't need to. But you're the one who can get up, walk away, and leave. You can't go to a movie and at the end of it go, oh, you know what? I only like $4 worth of that. So once again, just keep that in mind. Bet safe and make sure that you understand that this is a very tough league to bet and a very tough year to do so. So with that being said, thank you all so much for listening to this episode of the NFL Weekly here on the First Off the Bench podcast network. Everyone comes off the bench, but we are first. It's time for y'all to go wash your hands. And please, please, please stop hating everybody. We'll talk to y'all very soon. Take care.